Is Chris Drury making good decisions? Don't tease me, Chris. Don't make me believe again. Knock on wood. I like what the Rangers are doing right now. In just one day, the Rangers completely overhauled their blue line, and as far as their forward depth goes, they did something. Going over these moves in order, first up was the Joonas Korpisalo trade. For the Korpisalo trade, it's more about what the Rangers took on and less about what they gave up. All they gave up was a fourth rounder and forward Kalle Väisänen, who was a fourth round draft pick himself, a left winger. He's 6'5". I tried looking him up on Hockey Reference and nothing came up. He had 4 points in 51 AHL games last season. I always wonder how guys like this end up in these trades. So Drury gave up practically nothing in this deal, but what he gets is Joonas Korpisalo, who, from the looks of it, appears to be a serviceable backup goaltender. The problem is he has 2 years left on his deal at $4 million per season. And it's not like the Rangers were hurting for a goaltender. Jonathan Quick just retired, but we have Dylan Garand, who just signed a 2-year extension, 24-year-old goaltender. I know he doesn't have that much NHL experience. It's a very small sample size, but he has a record of 2-0-1 with a .948 save percentage and 162 goals against. Again, very small sample size, but I'd give him the chance. And it's not like there weren't goaltenders in free agency. There were plenty of backup fringe goalies in free agency. You could have signed for maybe $1 million, maybe 1.5. Apparently the reasoning for this move was Drury wanted to create some goaltending competition between Garand and another backup. But you didn't need to go and spend $4 million a year for the next 2 years for goalie competition. Now, aside from the negatives, what are the Rangers getting in Joonas Korpisalo? They're getting a goalie who has been serviceable. Last season, a record of 14-9-6. That's not terrible. His numbers beyond that were kind of terrible. .894 save percentage, .315 goals against. In today's NHL, those aren't, unplayable numbers, but they are not great by any stretch. He's 32 years old, so it's not like he's super up there in age where he's going to fall off. But the issue I have is you look at his career stats, and he's been decent at times, but to me, this isn't a move where you're looking at Korpisalo, you're bringing him in, and you're hoping that you get the best out of him. Because you look at his career stats, there are no numbers that jump out at me where I'm like, hopefully we get that version of Joonas Korpisalo. Hopefully we don't get the version we saw last year. Hopefully we get that version of him, the 2023 version, the 2019 version. Looking through his numbers, there's no period in time where he was a great backup goaltender. The Rangers do still have cap space, and it is only for 2 seasons. So say next season, Dylan Garand outplays Korpisalo, they send him down to the minors, maybe they put him on waivers, maybe somebody else claims him. Teams are always looking for goalies, so they're not totally cap strapped by this. It's not like it's an immovable contract. It's just one of those things. You didn't have to do it. Even though they didn't give up a lot, you didn't have to give up anything. And you didn't have to spend that much on a backup goaltender. It just seems like one of those moves where he went out of his way to bring in this goaltender that makes $4 million a year and hasn't been that great in the past, unless there's something from another member of staff within the New York Rangers, somebody maybe formerly from Columbus or Ottawa who really liked Korpisalo and said, hey, maybe we should bring him in as our backup. Besides that, this one's simply just a head-scratching move. Drury's next big move of the day was to bring in center Joe Veleno, and this one was a move for sure. Veleno's contract comes in at just a 1-year deal, $1.2 million. Now, this is a low-risk depth move, but it's another one of those moves where I just don't see what we're going to get out of this player. He was a former late first-round pick of Detroit, but looking through his numbers, he had one decent season, a couple of decent seasons, but he hasn't proven himself since. And you look at what he's done for us recently. Last season with Montreal, just 5 points in 61 games. He averaged just a little over 10 minutes a game, time on ice, 5v5. He was a -12. But what he did do is he averaged a minute and a half time on ice on the penalty kill. So potentially he could be a penalty kill option for us if he does crack the lineup consistently. He did play in 9 playoff games for Montreal. He got 1 point. So I dove a little bit deeper and looking into his other stats. His faceoffs, maybe he's a great faceoff taker. No, not very much. Not really. Last season, he finished with over 50% on draws for the first time in his career. The one shining light I can see through looking at his stats are he throws the body. 166 hits last season in only 61 games. That's pretty good. He's a physical player. So from what I'm looking at here, it's not a terrible move. It's not like it's a risky move. Again, it's only 1.2 for a year. If he doesn't crack the team, say he only plays 30 games, we move on from him. It's not a big deal. He's a depth option. Guys get hurt. You look at our bottom six right now, the majority are young players. We brought in Oliver Bjorkstrand, who I'll talk about in a second. But, we lost guys like Connor Sheary, Johnny Brodzinski. So it makes sense to bring in somebody who's a little bit younger and throws the body and at a lower cap hit. And you look at some other players that did sign yesterday. I do much prefer Drury going out and signing a guy like Joe Veleno on this cheap deal versus doing what Washington did and giving Boone Jenner 4 times 5.75. I'm very glad Drury stayed away from those types of moves and went for this bit of a low-risk move. Because in this case, at least if Joe Veleno isn't great, you're not investing a lot of money into him. You'd have no problem putting guys like Noah Laba ahead of him in the lineup. Up next, now we get into the good moves. The aforementioned Oliver Bjorkstrand, a 1-year, $4.5 million contract. I really like this one too. Last season, Bjorkstrand was unimpressive, only 32 points in 80 games, but he averaged over 20 goals a season over the previous 7 seasons. Not that I'm necessarily expecting him to come back and score 20 goals for the Rangers next year, but it's the fact that he can do it. He's still only 31 years old. He's a proven scoring middle six winger, and while he doesn't kill penalties, he is defensively responsible. And as I mentioned previously with Joe Veleno, I would much rather a guy like Oliver Bjorkstrand in our middle six, bottom six, than guys like Sheary or Brodzinski. This is a great move by Drury. You look at our right wing. Say Pavel Dorofeyev plays right wing. Say Gabe Perreault stays on the right wing. You put Oliver Bjorkstrand on our third line right wing, and our depth is looking better than it has in the last couple of seasons. Moving on now, we have a trade to announce. Vincent Trocheck traded to the Utah Mammoth for defenseman Sean Durzi, forward prospect Cole Baudouin, and a third-round draft pick. Before I dive into the trade, I'd just like to say, Vincent Trocheck, you were an absolute fan favorite. You were one of my favorite Rangers over the last few years, one of the best contracts in the league. Utah, you're absolutely going to love this player. He was on Team USA for a reason, an elite penalty killer. He's an in-your-face guy. He's going to have a smile on his face the whole game. He's going to get right in the face of the other team. Even though he's not the biggest guy, he's always going to put himself in front of the net. He's got such underrated skill to his game. We saw there was a reason he played with Artemi Panarin the majority of his career with the New York Rangers. He is a very skilled, very smart player, very two-way responsible player, a great leader, unbelievable locker room guy. Utah is getting an awesome player in Vincent Trocheck. Now looking at what the Rangers got, we get Sean Durzi. And, he's not a name that necessarily jumps out at you. He's not Cale Makar. He's not Quinn Hughes. But he is a great puck mover and a great skater. If you saw my video the other day about my free agency predictions, I actually wanted the Rangers to take a swing at Rasmus Andersson. Hindsight, I'm glad they didn't do that. They're not paying $8.5 million for the next 7 years or what be it. Sean Durzi is only 2 more years at $6 million. So if he doesn't work out this season, say he's a defensive liability, he's just unplayable, we can easily move on from that contract. But if he plays really well, then $6 million is well worth it. And again, we have him for the next 2 seasons. What I like about him is he's that, again, great skating, great puck-moving defenseman that the Rangers desperately needed. Right now, and in recent years, the only offense we're getting from the blue line is Adam Fox. The last couple of seasons, Adam Fox has dealt with minor and in some cases major injuries. And when the times he was out, a few seasons ago, when he was out, Erik Gustafsson took his spot on the power play. And he was decent, but again, just saying, that was our backup plan. That was our fallback, was Erik Gustafsson, who's been tossed around the league since then. Last season, when Fox went down, Gavrikov was our power play quarterback, anchor at the blue line, taking one-timers. And Gavrikov isn't terrible offensively. He scores goals. Last season, he scored over 10 goals. I believe he scored his career high in goals last season. But point is, the Rangers haven't had a true secondary option as an offensive defenseman. Sean Durzi 100% is that, and he is nothing else. Looking at his advanced analytics, He is not a great defender. His penalty killing is non-existent. But again, a secondary power play option, another defenseman who can skate and move the puck, right-handed shot, which we just don't have. And when you pair him up on the second pairing next to a guy who we're going to talk about in a little bit, I think it could be a very solid second pairing, and our top four defense is looking better than it has in years. I don't want to mispronounce his name again, so I'm just going to call him Cole. We get Cole from Utah, a former first-round draft pick, 24th overall in 2024. I went back and watched this draft to see kind of what they spoke of this kid when he was drafted, and Utah actually traded up a couple of spots to take him at 24th overall. He's 6'2", 211-pound center, 20 years old, and at the time he was drafted, he was compared to none other than JT Miller. Last season, Cole absolutely tore it up in the OHL, 88 points in 54 games, and 29 points in just 15 playoff games. He also had 7 points in 7 games at the World Juniors. Another positive, he's already signed his ELC. He signed it last summer, but he didn't play in any games this season for Utah, so he did not burn a year of that contract. So he still has 3 years left on his ELC, and he'll be an RFA when he's 23 years old. So it works out perfectly. We've got him for potentially 3 years on the roster at a no-cost minimum ELC contract. I'm not going to sit here and try to predict what Cole's going to be. I don't want to sit here and say I'm super excited for him to be a top 6 center for the Rangers one day, but I can say it's good that the Rangers at least got a young prospect center. This has been the hope since back at the trade deadline when Vincent Trocheck's name was first thrown out there. Was we knew for Trocheck we needed to get a center, whether it was a young center from the Minnesota Wild like Danila Yurov, a guy who could come in and play right away, or at least a top center prospect. And we got a guy who was drafted just 2 years ago, 20-year-old center who just tore it up in the OHL. This is basically a first-round pick we're getting back in this deal, except we don't have to wait 5 years for him to pan out. We might only have to wait 1 or 2 years to see what he can do. And if he turns out to be a second, third-line center for the Rangers, then it's all gravy. It works out. The Rangers did not have a single top center prospect in their system before this move, and I'm really excited to see what he can do. Up next, we have the other half of the Sean Durzi acquisition, and it is Marcus Pettersson from the Vancouver Canucks. The Rangers trade a 2030 top 10 protected first-round draft pick, and we get a veteran defenseman, a 30-year-old defenseman, who fits perfectly on that second pairing with Sean Durzi. Suddenly, our top 4 defense is now Gavrikov, Fox, Pettersson, and Durzi, and that makes me very excited for next season. You look at Pettersson himself, and this is one of Mike Sullivan's guys. He played for him in Pittsburgh for years. That's where he came into the league. That's where he made himself known. Looking at him more recently, last year he played in all 82 games. He's averaged about 21 minutes a game on ice for the last 5 seasons. So he's a minute-eating defenseman. He's a shot blocker, a penalty killer, and it's just $5.5 million for the next 5 years. We've got a very steady defenseman. Brings in all that stability that we've needed. And as I said, fits in perfectly in the top 4. And this, as I'll mention in a bit, it doesn't affect the Rangers' future as much as some people think it does. And what I mean by that is a lot of people were worried that Albert Smits is not going to be able to make the lineup now because of Marcus Pettersson, and I just don't believe that to be true. You look at our left side, as of now, we have Gavrikov at the first pairing, we have Marcus Pettersson slotting into the second pairing with Sean Durzi, and then the third pairing is up for grabs. If Albert Smits is good enough, he'll crack that opening night lineup, and if he doesn't, that's okay. We have Matthew Robertson, we have Drew Fortescue, there's competition there, and if Smits doesn't make the lineup, even though he was considered the most NHL-ready defenseman in the draft, it doesn't mean he has to play for the Rangers next season. There's no reason to rush him, and if you don't acquire Pettersson, you look at our left side, and we're certainly not competing next year. Because you look at our left side, and yeah, we have Gavrikov, but we have the same problem that we had last year. Now you have potentially Matthew Robertson playing on the second pairing, which he is not fit for. He's more of a third pairing at best. Smits, you throw him right into the top 4 in the NHL. I don't think that's what they want to do either. You don't want to rush him. Fortescue, again, very few NHL games played. You don't want him in that number 4 spot. Nobody fits there. And you look at the Rangers' moves that they made today, and you look at the Dorofeyev move, the Rangers are pushing to contend sooner rather than later. They realize they have a window, and I'll go into that window a little bit more later. But they needed a guy like Pettersson to come in and bring in that stability on the blue line and give more of a buffer, more of a cushion for Smits. So again, he's not thrust right into a top 4 role. So I don't think this impacts him at all. If it does, it impacts him in a positive way. If you even want a Rangers-related example, if you go back to 2019, the Rangers brought in Adam Fox, a young, up-and-coming offensive defenseman with all this potential. And the Rangers already had an offensive defenseman in Tony DeAngelo, and he was scoring at a pretty prolific rate at that time. He was our power play guy. And not only that, but the Rangers also went out and traded for and signed Jacob Trouba to a massive contract. So there are two right-handed defensemen, both proven, who were ahead of Adam Fox at that point in the depth chart. So you're saying, well, what is Fox going to do now? He's going to be in the third pairing. Now he's going to have to play in the AHL. There's no space for him. He ended up playing himself into the lineup. He earned his spot, and he ended up winning a Norris Trophy in his second season. Not that Albert Smits is going to win the Norris anytime soon, but it's not going to be Marcus Pettersson that prevents him from doing so. For the last trade of the day, we have the other half of the Boston trade. Now, this one, if these trades came out at the same time, I think it could have been a little bit more forgiving. Boston did Chris Drury a solid. They realized that they fleeced him a little bit on the Korpisalo deal, and they decided, we'll take Will Borgen off your hands for a second and a conditional third-round pick. That conditional third-round pick in 2028, it becomes another second if Boston makes the conference final in either of the next two seasons, and Borgen plays 50% of the playoff games in either of those runs. I will say, although analytically Will Borgen does not look good, I never thought he was a bad defenseman. I never thought he was unplayable. Was he worth his contract? That was always the discussion. $4.1 million for the next 4 years. That's what Drury is getting himself out of, which is awesome. I mean, that $4 million, that makes up for the Korpisalo $4 million, and it's only for 2 years versus 4. So it works out there. And also, we just didn't have any more space for Borgen. I would much rather have Dursey and Pettersson on our second pair rather than Borgen anywhere near the top 4. We'll put it that way. Borgen, his reputation was kind of tarnished from the start. He was brought in exchange for Capo Caco, who was a Rangers fan favorite. He was our second overall pick. He was supposed to be a career Ranger. He was supposed to be our star winger, and it didn't pan out. Anybody we received in that Caco trade was not going to be beloved by the fan base. And, it was Will Borgen, who was a mostly unproven, second, third pair defenseman, very uninspiring acquisition. And Drury immediately locked him up to a 5-year extension, which just put a bad taste in everyone's mouth. So it was almost from the day that contract was signed, fans were waiting for the day that he would be moved. And today, Chris Drury does that. He is able to move Will Borgen, and he's able to get a second and a third round pick for him, which is just unbelievable. Boston fans, Will Borgen's going to give you next to nothing offensively. He's a less than outstanding defenseman defensively, and again, analytically poor. He does throw the body, which is a positive, but overall, you're not getting a defenseman that's going to transform your blue line here, unfortunately. So for any Boston fans that were hoping to get Rasmus Andersson out of today and got Will Borgen, I am sorry. I want to wrap this video up by looking at the Rangers as a whole and their direction. Now, the reason I've been kind of down as a Rangers fan in the last year is because there hasn't seemed to be a sense of direction. We're trading a guy like Artemi Panarin. We're trading guys like Vincent Trocheck, who are veterans, guys who have been with this team, who have been great for this team for years. But then we're also getting guys like Dorofeyev and Pettersson. What is the move here? What are we doing? Are we getting worse? Are we getting better? What kind of retool is this? I don't understand. If we're just retooling, then why are we trading our best player for a 20-year-old Liam Greentree? What is going on? But after the draft, after the Dorofeyev move, and after, especially now, everything I've seen today, whether I agree with it or not, I see the direction, which is really what I think us as fans have wanted, and I think any fan of any franchise wants. Whether you agree with it or not, you just want some sense of direction. You want to know that the front office has a plan, and I can see now what Chris Drury's plan is. Something I've been saying over the last year in response to fans that think that the Rangers should have totally torn it down is they simply can't. We have too many years tied up in too many players. And now you look at the additions of Dorofeyev and Pettersson, you look at the Rangers core, and Pavel Dorofeyev and Igor Shesterkin are locked up for the next 7 years. Alexis Lafreniere and Vladislav Gavrikov are locked up for the next 6 years. Now Marcus Pettersson for the next 5 years. Mika Zibanejad and JT Miller for the next 4 years. Adam Fox for the next 3 years. So the Rangers simply just have too many years and too much money tied up in a core that you can't move. There's just too many guys to move on from. And to be honest, all of those names I mentioned, none of those guys are bad players. They are all useful players. And again, a couple we just brought in, and you look at what is supplementing them. You think the Rangers are an old team. All those guys I mentioned, they're older, JT Miller, Mika Zibanejad, they're out of their prime and this and that. Well, as far as 25 years old and younger players the Rangers have either on their roster or in their system that could potentially play on the team next year, you have Dorofeyev, Lafreniere, Cooley, Cartier, Laba, Kemlash, Perreault, Sikora, Greentree, Fortescue, Robertson, Schneider, Garand, Smits, and if you want to throw him in there, Matt Rempe. The Rangers, again, whether you agree with it or not, you can argue the quality of the players versus other teams all you want. You can argue whether you think they're going to contend or not. You can argue with the fact that they have a core. They have a core that is locked up, and they have plenty of young talent coming in and supplementing that core. You look at our wingers, sure, our centers, Zibanejad and Miller, are older, but Zibanejad just had a great season. JT Miller had a down year. He was injured, I would think, the entire season. He didn't look very good the whole season. He looked uncomfortable. He looked slower than normal. But this is a guy who's scoring 100 points the last few seasons. And even last year, 2 years ago, he was a point-per-game Ranger. He looked awesome. That's the reason he was given the C. There is definitely a chance that he could bounce back next year and be that guy again, especially now with Trocheck out of the way. JT Miller can finally slot into that second-line center spot where he should have been from the get-go. And you look at our wingers, Dorofeyev, Lafreniere, Cooley, and Perreault. Those are potentially our top 6 wingers. All of them are 25 years old or younger. That's pretty good. You combine that with bringing in Bjorkstrand and Veleno as depth options with younger guys like Laba, Kemlash, Sikora, Greentree, who can all fight for spots and play down in the lineup. You have Ty Cartier, who came in from waivers, who was a great Ranger near the end of the year. You combine that with the fact that our top 4 and overall top 6 defense is looking stronger than it has in years, and the fact that we have one of the best goaltenders in the league in Igor Shesterkin. This team's not looking bad, man. It should not surprise you one bit if this team makes the playoffs. It's easy to get down on your own team. I've been guilty of it in the past, but I'm excited for next season. The Rangers still have $6 million in cap space, by the way. Let me know in the comments if you think there's anything else they should do with that $6 million in space or if they should hang on to it. Let me know your thoughts going into next season, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care.